Hello, Facebook. I'm Tony Dokoupil here in the Toyota Green Room, and I have with me...
I'm Tim Herrera from the New York Times.
And you are?
Editor of Smarter Living.
And your latest newsletter is about?
It's about mistakes.
Mistakes. Everybody makes them.
We all make them.
We make them professionally, we make them personally.
All across the board.
And our general reaction is?
Well, we tend to think of these like huge monumental mistakes as something that's going to like change the course of our life, right? But we just need to kind of take a step back when we make these huge mistakes and realize everything's going to be fine, everything's okay. Relax a little bit.
And we should clarify, we don't just mean like, you know, you ordered the double cheeseburger and you're like, I really could have gone with just a single patty.
Right, we're talking about choosing the wrong career or the wrong romantic partner or these huge life-changing things like that.
Yeah.
And so, you know, the first step when we are in a position where we're wondering whether we've made the right decision is to really just be very honest and very truthful with ourselves and think, was this a mistake? And really be open and kind of sincere about what we actually did and whether it was a mistake in the first place. You know, it's really difficult to accept these huge mistakes. There's a lot of cognitive biases that work against us. So there's something called the commitment bias. And
well, I believe what you're going to bring up is Vince Lombardi, essentially, right? Quitters never win, winners never quit.
Sure, right.
Stick to it, America.
And in a lot of times, that's great. But the commitment bias really plays into that. It's this idea that we let our past behaviors and decisions influence our current and future behaviors. And part of it that goes into it is we generally want to be seen as people who are consistent, who maybe have convictions, who stick to it. But you know, that can be good. There are benefits to that.
Okay, for that, maybe have convictions.
Maybe have convictions.
There are a few things I might stand for sometimes.
But really it can negatively impact your future decisions. If you want to sort of justify a past decision that you think might be bad with future decisions that play into that, you're just compounding a problem, making it worse. And this,
this is a Monday that we're having this conversation.
Yes.
Your newsletter came out on a Monday. If you got married on Saturday and you woke up on Sunday and you thought this was a huge mistake?
I mean, look, I'm in no position to give anybody marriage advice, but you know, the way out of these huge mistakes isn't to make these rash decisions. You know, a lot of the times the reason that we get into these situations is because we made rash decisions, things that were impulsive or that we weren't fully informed about. And so that's the last thing we want to do. So don't, run out of your marriage on a Monday if you got married on Saturday.
Just wake up before your partner, stare at them thoughtfully. Wonder.
This is great life advice. I like it. No, but you do want to kind of take a step back and think, what are kind of some low-risk baby steps that you can take to, one, figure out the mistake, two, kind of be okay with it and accept it. But when you're going through this process, you want to be really careful not to let that mistake define you or your self-worth or your value. Because it's so easy to fall into these cycles where you start beating yourself up because you thought you made a bad decision, and then it just turns into this kind of shame spiral. Yeah. And there's studies that show that once you kind of fall into those, it can have physical implications for your health. It can impact your self-esteem, it can impact your decision-making ability, and it can lead to depression.
One of the things you point out that I think a lot of people are probably dealing with right this second is they made some mistake, and in their mind, it is the most important and significant thing that happened in the universe yesterday.
Yes.
And in fact, not.
The truth is, we obsess about these because we're seeing it firsthand because these mistakes happen to us. But the truth is, people have lives. Like, you are not the focal point of anybody else's life, and the mistake that you made yesterday is not even on their radar.
It's actually interesting how often I've brought something up and been like, I really wanted to talk to you about yesterday. People are like, no idea where this is going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's this case for everybody. We just need to realize that, we are not the center of the universe as much as we'd like to think.
It's amazing how large I loom in my own memory.
Well, in mine too, now.
I'm a star of my own show here. Okay, so we are lesser than, and mistakes happen.
They happen to everybody. They're going to continue to happen. So, like I said, you just want to be aware that you made the mistake, accept that it happened, but don't let it define you. And from there, depending on what the situation is, there are a couple of ways out. Like I said, sort of general across-the-board advice is to think of what the smallest, lowest risk baby steps are that you can take. So, for example, let's say you realize you're in the wrong career. You've accepted that it was a mistake. You're not going to let the mistake define yourself, but you want to try to figure out how to get out. And so if someone's in that position, an easy way to kind of test the waters is to experiment with different areas of interests that could potentially turn into a career.
Yeah. Not necessarily marriages, they call that cheating.
Well, we don't have to go into that one. But again, that for marriage or romantic partners, for example.
Experiment with alternative. Honey, I know this looks bad. I know it looks awful.
Experiment however people would like to experiment.
Okay.
But for romantic partners, one thing that experts do suggest is to take a little mini break and sort of put together sort of a private list of pros and cons about the relationship. What are you enjoying? What are you getting out of it? What brings you joy about this relationship? And then conversely, what are the things that stick in your mind as this is maybe not working out?
Yeah.
And sort of go over that list and maybe share it with a really close friend and just get some outside feedback. Because when we're in these situations ourselves, it's really easy to kind of get blinders about them and not be able to see the entire situation for all that it is and see the context happening. And so it's really important to kind of have that outsider's opinion just to get someone's thoughts on it.
Yeah.
And from there, you might realize things are tough, but this wasn't a mistake. Or you might go the other way and think like, okay, maybe this was not actually the best move to make.
Is it wise to be the author of your own fate, acknowledge the mistake and fix it, or to sit back a little bit and let things unfold? If it was such a big mistake, maybe you're out of the marriage, you're out of the job.
Right.
Life has a way of self-correcting.
And there are things that we can only control, only so many things that we can control ourselves. Like there are always going to be factors that are just completely outside of our control. And I think that kind of comes together with just acknowledging a situation for what it is and being really critical and open and sincere with yourself and just, addressing everything that's happening, but being aware and not trying to gloss over it.
Have you made a big mistake in your life and recovered from it?
Many. Which one would you like to hear about?
How about the professional one?
So a couple of years ago, I did take a job that I realized very early on, not even 2 weeks in, that it was not the right job for me. I kind of jumped in a little haphazardly, maybe not as informed as I should have been about what it was and what my goals were and what my life ambitions were. And so I took this job and, a couple weeks in was like, this is not working out for me. And so for me, it was a really easy process to kind of get around because I realized so quickly that was not what I wanted to do, not where I wanted to be. And so I was able to kind of look at my options and evaluate and see where I wanted to be and what the next steps for me were going to be.
And now you work for the New York Times, the Harvard of news.
I guess it all worked out. Who knows?
On the subject of it all working out, there are a couple perspectives I like. I do actually, we were joking, but like the Buddhist perspective to mistakes is actually a helpful one. This sounds completely crazy, but sometimes you think you've made a mistake and things are falling apart, but in fact, if time goes on, it turns out to be things are falling into place.
Yeah.
Things are not falling apart, they're falling into place.
Right.
So bad thing happens, and you're like, that's terrible. Ask yourself, well, time will tell. Maybe the fact that I didn't get that job, that I blew that presentation, that interview went sideways, in the long run, great thing.
And so that is a wonderful perspective, and that's a perspective that I've written about. Just try to see the values of disadvantages or setbacks. Because
I may have read it. That could have been his work.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, what can you say?
All right. Very good.
All right.
Anything else? We good? What's the sign-off? How
do we wrap this up?
Oh, thanks for joining us.
Hey!
We need what's the final lesson?
We'll start ending here.
We can't say mistake-free.
I'll tell you what, be kind to yourself. How about that?
Beautiful, I love it.
You like that?
Thank you, Tim.
Great, thank you.
Cool.